There's been a lot of chatter since the March 9th, 2026 South Carolina Association of Realtors forms update. I've heard everything from broker-to-broker compensation is now illegal to seller-to-buyer broker compensation is the only option you can offer. I've even heard you can't market compensation anymore or amounts of compensation. Let's clear that up. None of that's true. I'm Daniel Moskowitz. I'm the broker in charge of Dunes Real Estate. And while I also serve on the Real Estate Commission for the state of South Carolina, the views I'm sharing in this video are strictly my own and should not be interpreted as the views of the commission. Now, let's start with the facts. There have been no new laws in South Carolina or federally resulting from the NAR settlement of August 2024. The outcome of the settlement were two primary points of practice change. First, offers of compensation can no longer be communicated through the MLS. Easy. And second, and in general terms, if you're going to be compensated for your services, before performing those services for a buyer, you need to specify what that is in a written agreement. That's it. And importantly, the settlement itself does not prohibit broker-to-broker compensation. On March 9th, the South Carolina Association of Realtors formalized a position on the business compensation models they will support moving forward. And that's their prerogative. It's their choice. But choice is not the same as law. And there has been no prohibition of broker-to-broker compensation. In fact, if you look directly at guidance from the National Association of Realtors, you'll find clear direction on how broker-to-broker compensation can still be structured post-settlement. Now, let's transition to what matters most. Your client. There's a growing push toward putting sellers in direct contractual agreements with buyer brokers. Think about that for a second. You're asking your seller, your client, to enter into a contractual obligation with someone who does not represent them, someone who owes fiduciary duties to the other side. Why would an agent encourage that layer of exposure for their client? Are you offering value to your seller by subjecting them to a binding agreement that puts their contractual performance in direct liability with the third party? Think. 1, seller to listing agent. 2, seller to purchaser. And 3, seller with buyer brokerage. Consider broker-to-broker agreements, by contrast, keep the structure aligned. We as brokers remain the parties managing those agreements as authorized by our sellers and accordingly maintaining our fiduciary duty by protecting our clients from unnecessary entanglements with third parties. Now, I understand why some firms are moving away from that broker-to-broker compensation when listing property. I recognize the financial risk a listing brokerage takes when signing compensation instead of placing it on their seller. But it's important to recognize that's a business decision, not a legal requirement or a position of opposition to the practice, because in my experience, it seems nearly all continue to participate in broker-to-broker compensation when they're representing a buyer. So let's shift and shed a little light on the other recently promoted theory that you shouldn't advertise or communicate offers of compensation because they promote steering. That accusation is simply not grounded in reality. If a buyer's agent is steering, that's already a violation of their fiduciary duty. Transparency doesn't create the problem. Behavior does. A behavior that is now even of lesser vulnerability post-settlement with the specifying of compensation requirements of the buyer with the buyer-broker agreement. And post-settlement, a realtor buyer broker's receipt of a seller's offer of compensation remains contingent on your agreement with your buyer. When a buyer agent is not obtaining the full offer of compensation due to their buyer-broker agreement being a lesser figure, we at Dunes Real Estate return those funds to our seller. But as far as offers of compensation go, if you want real-world proof that marketing financial incentives to real estate agent pays off for home sellers, Look no further than the largest home builders in the country. Public companies, private companies, highly sophisticated operators that scrutinize every dollar spent. They continue to offer compensation openly because they've done the math. It works to get their homes sold for the highest price. If it didn't, those dollars would be going straight to their bottom line. At the end of the day, this isn't about ideology. It's about strategy. And when listing, choosing to represent your seller's best interest. It's about disclosure and clarity with our clients. It's about educating your client, presenting options, and aligning their decisions with their goals. If a seller isn't comfortable offering compensation, they shouldn't. But if they are, and it helps them achieve a better outcome, then it deserves to be part of the conversation. I'll continue to put out content to help cut through the noise and bring clarity to what's actually happening in our industry. Not opinions driven by headlines, but insight driven by real practice, real experience, and real accountability. You want my advice? Focus less on what's being said and more on what actually serves your client. I'm Daniel Moskowitz, broker in charge of Dunes Real Estate, home of the best real estate agents in the Low Country. Thank you for watching.